Money makes us complacent. There really isn't anything else to it. An article from Forbes talks about how you're going to see significant pay increases from when you first get into your 20s to when you get into your 30s. This is due to a lot of reasons. First off, when you get out of college, obviously you're probably not going to be making a ton of money right from the jump. It's very possible while you were in college, you were working a minimum wage job or a job that didn't pay very well, or maybe even it was just an unpaid internship. So for the sake of simple math here, let's say when you first get out of college, you're making $25,000 a year, or even your senior year in college, you're making $25,000 a year with the job you were working. Then you get your first job out of college, and let's say you make a significant pay jump to $40,000 a year. Well, that's a 50% pay increase just like that. And being someone who's in their early 20s and just out of college, you might not have a ton of expenses other than your student loans, especially if after college you decide to move back home with your parents, or if you even lived with your parents throughout your entirety of college, which means you might have a little bit of extra money lying around. And as I've talked about so many times on the channel, most people in their 20s, especially the early 20s, are not going to take the time, make the effort to invest that difference or invest a portion of their salary. They're most likely going to say something like, I'm gonna buy that new car, I'll take that new shirt, give me a new pair of jeans, throw in a new pair of shoes. And for a lot of people watching this video that are in their 20s, they really might be wondering, why does this matter? They might be saying, I have the money, I'm not racking up credit card debt, I'm paying for everything in cash, I'm working very hard, I deserve to spend this money on myself. And while I think it's important to spend money on yourself and treat yourself from time to time, because no one wants to be the richest man in the graveyard by any means, as gloomy as that may sound, and this is a concept I'm really trying to get better at myself, because if you know me, this is something I've always struggled with for many, many years now. But when you're in your 20s and you're buying that new car, you're buying these new clothes, you're buying those expensive shoes, your financial confidence is at an all-time high. And in large part, this is because you've started to make more money than you have really ever made before. And I was a victim of this as well. When I went from working at Subway to URI, I started to make significantly more money, and I started to splurge a little bit on things that I really don't buy anymore now, even though I'm making more money now than I was making back then. Back then, when I first started working at URI and I did have that significant pay increase, I would buy things like clothes pretty consistently, I'd buy shoes a lot, I'd go out to eat all the time, and several other things that I really don't do nearly as much now. And I definitely became complacent with money, and I'm not afraid and I'm not upset to admit that by any means, because it's the truth, and it taught me a lot of lessons that I'm gonna carry with me for the rest of my life. But the issue with having financial confidence so high in your 20s is that your expenses and your responsibilities are so low and non-existent that you're really starting to build bad habits. So as you start to get older and you start to take on more responsibilities and you start to take on more expenses, you already have this mindset of living this lavish lifestyle. Sure, that car payment on that really nice car you just bought might not seem like a big deal now, and maybe it's okay for you to go out a few times a week and spend $100 at a bar or a restaurant. But what happens if down the road you start to look into buying a house? What happens if you have a family and a couple of kids? What if that money needs to go towards necessities and utilities, and it just doesn't fit into your budget years down the road, but you're stuck with it and you really have to implement very strong self-discipline in order to break these habits, which is extremely hard. And it doesn't help that once you get that first job out of college, that it's very possible for the next several years, you could see a significant pay increase, whether that's from moving around from company to company or seeing promotions at your current job, which in my mind just enhances these habits and makes them worse, because you might not see that percentage of a pay increase forever and ever and ever. And this is what this Forbes article goes on to say, and this is what a lot of people that are in their 20s I don't think understand, but as you go on, as you get older, you're going to see, I guess, a decline from a percentage basis in the raises that you make. For example, when you're in the 20 to 25-year-old age bracket, it's very possible that you could go from, say, making $40,000 a year to getting a new job and maybe a promotion and making $80,000 a year. That's definitely not heard of to see a 100% pay increase. But when you are in your 40s or 50s and say you're making $80,000 or $90,000 a year, it's not going to be as likely that you're going to find a job that's going to start paying you $160,000 or $170,000 a year completely out of the blue. This Forbes article, and yes, I understand that this Forbes article is a little bit older, but I still think it's a good one with very good principles, and I think it's a good rule of thumb at the end of the day. But the article states that the age brackets of under 25 to the age bracket of 25 to 34, Americans' income is going to increase on average of approximately 111%. However, from the age bracket of 25 to 34 to the age bracket of 35 to 44, American salaries are only going to grow on average of 33%. Which is a significant drop-off. This is due to a lot of reasons. As you continue to move up the ladder, there's only going to be so many positions that need to be filled, and you really need to get into that category of the 1% of the 1% to eventually move up that ladder of the more wealthier classes, I guess you could say. But when you first get out of college, there's tons of positions and tons of people are hiring, and there's a lot more room for growth. But anyway, what I want to do in this video is I want to go over a couple of signs that might indicate or dictate that maybe someone's becoming complacent with money. And maybe you're someone in this video who just got out of college and they're looking for their first big boy or big girl job. Maybe you're just someone that wants to take the next step in their career, or maybe you're just someone out of the job hunt. But hopefully by watching this video and watching it through to the end, you really get a ton of value out of it, and it'll really help you moving forward, and it'll really help you not become complacent with money and really develop these bad habits that are going to be very difficult to break down the road. And if you do get any sort of value out of it, if you really don't mind dropping a like on the video, that really helps out the channel in a massive way. I can't even begin to express how much that really helps out the channel, because it does push this video out to an entire new audience and can have the potential to help a new group of people. So if you guys don't mind doing that, I really appreciate it. The first item on this list that really shows that someone might be becoming complacent with money, and I guess you can look at this from an entire career perspective, but the first one is that you are not looking for a new job. Now, this doesn't mean like, say you just got a new job and you've been there for maybe a week or so and you're not automatically on Indeed looking for the next big thing, that you're complacent. That's a little different, I would say. But if you've been at the job that you're currently at for say 2, 3, 4, 5 years and you have not been looking for a new job at all, then you might have started to become a little complacent. And I really believe that you should look for a new job every couple of years for a lot of reasons. First, it's a good opportunity to make more money. In America, the average salary increases between 3 to 5% each year. But if you find a new job and you negotiate your salary, it's very possible that you could see a 10% increase in your salary just from moving from one company to another. And obviously a lot of things go into this, like we talked about previously, like how old you are, the pay grades you're in. But if you're 25 plus or minus, maybe you're in your 30s or maybe you're younger than 25, it definitely makes a lot of sense to hop around from job to job, because you're probably nowhere near max out potential, as I like to call it. Second, it's going to keep you in check, and it's really going to help avoid complacency. And this is going to seem a little obvious, but once you've been at a job for a couple of years, you really start to get in a routine and you really start to get comfortable, and you start to take it even for granted, you can say, because you know what you have to do. You're going through the same thing every single day and you just feel like nothing can go wrong. But when you start a new job, everything begins to change and it really becomes more of a reality check. And I found with me personally, a change of scenery is definitely the best for my health, and I feel like I'm a lot happier moving around in more aspects than just the workforce from time to time. For example, I feel like I've been in a little bit of a rut lately, and I feel like I just need a new challenge. So I remembered my friend Matt gives jiu-jitsu lessons, and I've always been attracted to martial arts. It's always been something that's really interested in me, but it's always something I've put in, I'll get to it one day category, and something I've always just kept putting off, and I thought maybe when the timing is right, I'll get to it. And I thought, what better time is now? So I asked him if he'd be willing to give me a lesson and kind of work with me a little bit. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I'm really excited to pursue this new challenge once we get started. And just the thought of starting something like this, just the thought of starting something new, it got me really excited, and it really gave me that dopamine rush. Just the fact that I'm going down a new pathway, that I have something new that I can really improve at. It's super exciting, and I find this to be the same exact thing when I move from job to job. And lastly, even if you have no expectations at all to leave your job, it can give you leverage by just looking for a new job and receiving an offer. For example, I have one friend who was working for company X, we'll say, and company Y the other company, we'll call it, reached out to him on LinkedIn, asked him if he would be interested in moving forward with maybe an interview and talking about a position and a role for the company. And initially he turned it down, but he decided to go back and he thought that nothing bad could really come from this if he went through the interview process. So to make a really long story short, he went through the interview process with company Y and they offered him a job, and it was a promotion to what he currently had, and it provided him more job security. Well, he went back to company X and he said, look, I have a really good offer on the table. It provides more job security, it provides a pay increase, it provides a promotion. And he came to find out that at the time, his role at company X really was not replaceable, which is awesome because that means he had leverage. So what company X ended up doing, they said, look, if you stay with us and you turn down that offer from company Y, we'll give you a promotion and we will give you a salary increase, which he took because he was very happy at the company and he really did not want to leave that company he was currently at. But the more of this story is my friend was basically able to negotiate a pay increase simply by taking an interview with a different company. So if you have been at your job for a little while, just look around, go through the interview process, just go talk with a few people, and if you get an offer, that gives you leverage to go back to your boss and negotiate a raise all on your own. The second item on this list that we're gonna talk about, and I've definitely been a victim of this one in the past as well, is you spend money because you can. Now, don't take this one out of context here by any means. As I talked about earlier in the video, you don't want to be the richest person in the graveyard by any means at all, because none of us are taking money to the grave with us at the end of the day. But along the same line, I feel like people just feel the need to spend extra money they have, like it's burning a hole in their pocket. For example, let's say that you dedicate $300 from every single check to guilt-free, fun spending money, no questions asked, whatever you want, which I think is very important to have a certain portion of your capital allocated to this category. But let's say you do that, and let's say there's 1 week that you only spend $200 of that $300, and you decide, okay, I have to spend this extra $100. So you end up going on Amazon, making some spontaneous purchase, and you buy something that you're gonna use once or twice, and it's just gonna sit in your closet for the rest of eternity. And like I said, I've definitely been a victim of this in the past, but what I try to do now is, again, let's say there's $300 that I have dedicated towards fun, guilt-free spending money, and I spend $200 worth. Well, the first thing that I'm gonna do is probably save or invest that money because that's just who I am. But from time to time, if I really want to buy something new and the money's really just burning a hole in my pocket, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to buy something that's going to return value. So that could be something new for the YouTube channel, that could be something for the podcast, something that's really has the potential to provide a good ROI over the long term, as opposed to some materialistic item that I'm going to use once or maybe not use at all and just leave sitting there forever. The third sign that you have become complacent with money is you have no idea what your net worth is and you have no idea how much you have saved and invested. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to have your net worth down to a specific penny constantly. When someone asks you what your net worth is, it doesn't mean that you have to spit back at them without even thinking about it. My net worth is $10,346.32. But you should have a general idea of what it is. I see people all the time spend money and they're like, I don't know if I can afford this, but I'm going to figure it out at the end of the month, or something along those lines. And I know I talked about this in my last video a little bit, but I really think tracking your net worth is super important because it's going to make sure that you're moving forward from a financial perspective linearly. It's gonna make sure that you're moving this way, moving upwards, increasing your net worth, as opposed to moving this way, or God forbid, even this way. And you might not always move this way on a month-to-month basis or sometime from a year-to-year basis because there's going to be volatilities in the markets from time to time. But the important thing is to remember that you are moving upwards linearly over the long term. And I can honestly see a realistic argument that tracking your net worth is much more important than tracking your income. And I think this because, and none of this is financial advice at all, but I think because sometimes when you track your income, it's almost a false indicator of how wealthy someone is, because some people might make, say, $200,000 a year, but their expenses every single year are $205,000. So they're not that wealthy. But on the same lines, you can see someone making $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and they might have a net worth of $500,000 because they're taking advantage of their opportunities and they're saving, investing, and they're executing on those investing strategies. The second to last topic that we are going to talk about on this list that might show that you're complacent with money is that maybe you never looked at your bills. Stop me if you heard this before. You see people spending money on clothes, drinks, spontaneous Amazon purchases, subscriptions they never use, and they never even dig into their credit card statements. They just hit pay at the end of the month. And I don't mean to sound like a broken record here by reiterating this yet again, but I think it's so important to really dive into your credit card statement or really dive into your spending and see where your money is going. You hear people say all the time, I can't afford this, I can't afford that. But if you really can't afford those things, why don't you dive into your spending and really see what you are spending money on and see what you can cut out so you can afford those things that maybe you really desire and you really want, or maybe you even need. I've done this in the past and I still continue to do this, and I know most people watching this video are probably just going to assume that they know where their money is going because that's just human nature. But ever since I started tracking my spending in an Excel spreadsheet, it's really highlighted some of the areas that I can really cut back on and a lot of the areas that I'm allocating capital to that don't bring a ton of value in my life. I know some people like to not track their spending because it's too stressful. I know some people like to use Mint. Me personally, I just like to use a simple Google Excel spreadsheet. So I'll log on there every day or every couple of days, and I'll just log in everything that I spent for that day or everything I spent for the past couple of days. And then I'll tally everything up at the end of the week, and then I'll tally up everything at the end of the month, and then I'll calculate my net worth based off of those numbers. And like I just said, it's really helped me display the things in life that I'm spending money on that I really don't need to be spending money on, and things that aren't bringing any sort of value to my life and providing a positive ROI. The last thing on this list, and probably the most important thing on this list, is that you have no financial goals at all. I feel like it's so important to really have goals and really have a plan laid out to get to those goals, because it's one thing to set a goal for yourself, but it's a completely different thing to really sit down and plan out how you are going to get there and plan out each step along the way that you have to execute in order to achieve that goal, and vice versa. It's one thing to really have a plan laid out, but it's a completely different thing to see where that plan is going to go. And if you don't have a goal to back up that plan, it's very possible that you could feel that you just have your head down working and there's no end in sight. And in my opinion, this applies to finances as well. It's not very much of a tangible goal to say, I want to cut back on my spending and I want to save more money. I feel like that's not an adequate recipe for success, you can say. But on the flip side of it, say you say, I want to cut down from going out 4 times a week to 2 times a week, and I want to save an additional $200 a week on top of that until I reach $10,000. That's much more of a sustainable, tangible, reachable goal in my opinion, because you have that whole plan laid out and you have a goal, you have something you're shooting for at the end of it. And financial goals can be set in so many different ways, and it's all going to apply to what you want. A financial goal can be, I want to save more money to buy a house, I want to increase my income, I want to learn how to invest, I want to increase my net worth to X. There's so many different financial pathways and so many different financial goals you can set. And I think it's important that you actually set multiple financial goals. I have multiple financial goals, and I feel like this is just going to keep you more and more motivated as the days go on. But this goes back to what I said earlier in the video. If you don't have financial goals set and a plan laid out to execute them, you're really gonna be moving more like this, as opposed to like this. And financial goals are so unique because it's something that everyone really needs, I feel like, or the majority of people, whether you have $5 in your bank account or $5 million in your bank account. I think it's so important to have financial goals because even if you have $5 million in your bank account, and for a lot of people that are watching this video, that might seem like an astronomical amount of money, and you might be thinking, well, if you got 5 million, like, you don't have to worry about a thing. But if you have that mindset, you're going to become complacent. If something goes wrong, it's not going to be a very great scenario to be in. And I feel like if you're not setting financial goals and you're not laying out a plan to execute and achieve those financial goals, it's gonna be really tough. And I feel like it's just a recipe for disaster. And I feel like you're just becoming extremely complacent, because if you don't set these financial goals, if you don't move forward and execute on these financial goals, then you're wasting time at the end of the day. And when you waste time, you waste money, and you're not going to be able to take as much of advantage of compound interest as you could. So if you are gonna take anything away from this video, then take this last item away from this video and set financial goals. Say to yourself, what financial goals can I set over the next 10, 20, 30 years, whether you have $1 million in your bank account or whether you have $1,000 in your bank account, that really are going to help grow your net worth at an exponential rate. In saying that, guys, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Again, like I said earlier, if you don't mind dropping a like on the video, if you got any sort of value out of this, this really does help out my channel in a massive way. Also, don't remember to subscribe and turn notifications on, because I do post new videos every single week, as well as the podcast that I now have up and running. We have a very exciting, fun one coming up this week, so I'm really happy about that. Let me know down in the comments what your financial goals are, and if you've ever become complacent with money, I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments, and I'll see all of you guys in next week's video.